target bearing 260, range 1,000 yards. Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we're across the river from the battleship on the Submarine Becuna, SS-319. She's part of Independent Seaports collection and a museum ship that you can tour. She's a World War II era diesel electric submarine in her Cold War configuration right now. And we're up in her conning tower looking through one of her periscopes at Battleship New Jersey. The two ships sit roughly parallel to each other on either side of the Delaware River. So, could Becuna fire at New Jersey when the two ships are side by side? Famously, submarines tend to have their torpedo tubes in the front of the ship. Becuna has torpedo tubes at the back of the ship as well. However, the conception is that torpedoes can only fire straight ahead, which means that Becuna could not fire at New Jersey. But that conception is all wrong. Here in the conning tower of Becuna, there is a sophisticated fire control computer, every bit the equal of the Mark 8 on Battleship New Jersey, that allows you to plot a firing solution into your computer, into your torpedo, that will program the course it's going to run. This is the TDC, or Torpedo Data Computer. You can see it is maybe 2 feet from the periscope, and all of 4 feet from our radars and sonars. So up here on the conning tower of the submarine, a crew of about a dozen men are getting all of the range and bearing information on the target to plug into this computer, and then this computer feeds down into the two torpedo rooms, where there is a device between the tubes that will automatically update the torpedoes via an analog method to tell them when to turn, how deep to run, all that sort of information. So, whereas the Mark 8 fire control computer on an Iowa-class battleship is taking in 19 separate points of data, the TDC only needs 5 or 6. Some of that is fed in automatically. Our ship's own speed and course is fed in from the log room for the speed and the gyroscope repeater for our course, so that information's done. We're getting the other information, hopefully from the periscope. That gives us pretty good data, but it's not necessary. We can also get that information from radar or sonar. So all of that is plugged in here via these dials, and then it's solving a fairly basic trigonometric problem. It's just a triangle. You're here, your target's here, but in X amount of time, where X is the length of time it takes the torpedo to get there, the target is going to move to this location. So the problem you're solving is where to have the torpedo end up so that it meets the target. This is extremely precise. You put this information in, it gives you really great output. The only problem is some of this information is closer to guesswork than actual mathematics. So that's why we've got 10 torpedo tubes. You can fire a full spread of 6 shots from your forward torpedo room, and they're going to come out like this, and maybe they won't all hit the target, but a Mark 14 torpedo has a really big warhead if it chooses to detonate, so you can do a lot of damage with just 1 or 2 hits. It would be a sin to come up into the conning tower and not talk about the periscopes. Yes, I did use the plural there. Popular misconception is that submarines have a periscope, and that's not true. World War II era fleet type submarines had 2, an observation scope, like this one in front of me, and an attack scope. So the observation scope is a little bit bigger, and it's got a much wider field of view. Great for initial contact. But because it's bigger, it's easier for the enemy to spot. So your attack scope is a little bit smaller, has a much smaller field of view, but it has built-in crosshairs and a built-in statometer, so you can find the range and bearing to a target so that you can very easily plug it into your computer. Periscope depth for a fleet type submarine like this one is around 60 feet. That's of course measured from the bottom of the keel. So this boat is somewhere around 40 feet tall, keel to the top of the sail, give or take 5 feet. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head. And right now you can see the periscope is deployed in the up position. So it's sticking out maybe 15, 20 feet above the top of the sail. If we were sailing normally, this would fold down and retract into a tube built into the boat. So it goes all the way down into the bottom of the boat through this tube, and then it is down, so you're not going to accidentally hit it on something sailing over you or have it up there creating drag and cavitation, all sorts of noise that other submarines can pick up, or surface ships with their sonar. Iowa-class battleships have up to 4 spaces to steer from. Submarines just have 2. So your main steering location is up here in the conning tower. Directly below us there's an emergency steering position in case the conning tower floods or is otherwise damaged or lost or not operating. Much like some of the redundant steering positions on an Iowa-class battleship, the helmsman here doesn't have a great view. Windows on submarines are generally considered to be a bad idea, so the helmsman has nothing to look at. If I was the helmsman here, I'd like hang a picture here. I don't know, maybe a nice landscape picture, I think. So, much like the redundant steering positions on the Iowas, you don't need to see where you're going. You've got things like your gyroscopic compass repeater here that are telling you what direction you're sailing in, and you're in the middle of the ocean, so there isn't really much to hit. Assuming you're navigating in restricted waterways, you're most likely doing that on the surface. So there would be the captain or whoever the officer is up in the exterior of the conning tower. There's a position up there to stand where they can see where they're going, and they're just shouting their orders right back down here. Of course, you don't need to see that. Using a chart, you can just plug out your information, very similar to how the TDC works. You're just using math to solve where you are. If I go in this direction at this speed for this much time, I'm going to cover this much distance. And I know if I cover this much distance, then I'm going to run aground. So before I get there, I've got to turn in this direction. So you can do all of that by what's called dead reckoning. Much like steering positions on the battleship, we've got a couple of other things. You've got a rudder angle indicator here. Same deal. You've got engine order telegraphs for both port and starboard. Except on a submarine, engine order telegraphs are motor order telegraphs. Remember, this is a diesel electric boat, so it's an electric motor that's driving the 2 propellers. That's another difference. Iowa-class battleships have 4, but they still only have 2 telegraphs, 1 for port and starboard. A final piece of technology up here in the conning tower for aiming the torpedoes is this device right here called Mark 37. Not to be confused with our Mark 37 gunnery directors for the 5-inch guns. This is how you would aim acoustic torpedoes, which work a little bit different than the normal torpedoes we've been talking about before. With those other torpedoes, you fire and forget, and hopefully the rudder on them doesn't jam and send the torpedo in an end run back at your own boat. These are wire guided, and they can home in on the target. Much like modern torpedoes have their own sonar that they can use to track a target, this one is using acoustics. So it's listening for the sound of a target ship's propellers. Make sure your boat is not moving when you fire this, or it'll hear you first. Those torpedoes are wire guided, so you can continue to put input into them right up until the wire is severed. And so the system is completely separate from the TDC over there. Acoustic torpedoes, like the Mark 27, came out before the end of the war, and American submarines were deployed in the Sea of Japan firing these prior to the surrender. Have you ever been in a submarine's conning tower? If you're interested in it, ISM does tours, behind-the-scenes tours of this space, be sure to check their website for availability. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of businesses and individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support you guys have given us. There's a link in the description if you would like to support both Battleship New Jersey and Independent Seaport Museum to help them with the restoration of their historic vessels. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our 2 YouTube channels. Both museums have one, so if you like the content we're putting out, be sure to check out ISM's as well. Thanks for watching. This video was filmed with content help from my counterpart here, Greg Williams. Greg shows up in all of the Becuna videos that ISM produces, and he is the submarine manager here. So thank you for your support, Greg.